Welcome back to the Write It Down podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Maratta, bringing you one-on-one interviews to challenge, inspire, and encourage. Up next is former running mate for Florida House of Representatives, Logan Luse. Logan is an old friend of mine from the University of Florida and moved to Brevard County shortly after graduating. He is a young professional, knowledgeable in all things agriculture, environment, and natural resources. Logan has developed a conservative approach at preserving Florida's natural environment and is dedicated to improving the industry standard. For more of his story, you know what to do. Sit back, relax, and get your pens ready because this is Write It Down. All right, welcome back to the Write It Down podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Maratta, bringing you one-on-one interviews to challenge, inspire, and encourage. Today is my good friend Logan Luse on the mic with me. Logan, thanks for coming.
Of course, I'm glad to be here.
I've known Logan, almost like a decade now, I feel like.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So he's a Gator, as you can see on his shirt. Go Gators, represent. I met him at the good old Texas Roadhouse in Gainesville, where we serve fall off the bone ribs and cut steaks.
Freshly baked bread.
Yes. But Logan has always been involved. He was involved at Texas Roadhouse as the LSM, right?
Yep.
Marketer.
Yeah.
And he knows everybody. So you can't go anywhere without Logan shaking a hand or changing a life. So I'm really excited that you're here today. And then he followed me to Brevard County once we graduated UF. I make a joke because you're like the third or fourth person from Texas Roadhouse Gainesville specifically that's moved to Brevard County. I think it's because I'm here. But I make that joke because whenever I went to Gainesville and worked there, I feel like no one really knew where Melbourne was.
No, I didn't.
No, I was like, yeah, it's like east of Orlando, but like south, and they're like, oh, so Miami, and you like don't know how to describe it, but now everyone knows about Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
So now anytime I go to Crunch, or if I go on Facebook, someone has moved here for a job. A lot of it is engineers, you know, SpaceX and all that. But Logan, you are a jack of all trades, and
master of none, I guess.
No, you are a master. And so I want to tee this off, of course, with the political realm because you have been involved in politics for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because again, he moved here, and then it's like now you're on my ballot, and I'm like, Logan Luse. I'm like, what are you? No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit of your background and like when you were a kid, was it like, oh, I want to be in politics. I want to change, people's opinions on things. What was kind of the trajectory that brought you to that space?
Yeah, so never ever thought about politics. In Texas, I grew up, my childhood home was foreclosed. My parents are divorced, jumped back and forth between parents, that kind of stuff. So life was more on survival of what I was going to eat, just that kind of stuff. And as a middle school kid, I was one tardy away from truancy, and I had a family that came into my life, took guardianship of me, and it was funny because I split the semester of where I was going to high school or middle school, and then with them, and then I get called on stage for perfect attendance, and it's like my whole family was just like, "This is a turnaround," like where he was almost had truancy for being tardy because if my mom wasn't coming home, I'm not getting on the school bus.
No.
And as a child, it's like, okay, what can I do? And I kind of regret it now because I could be even further of who I am. But then again, I appreciate and love who I am today.
Yeah, of course.
So it was a challenge and it was more on survival. But so thinking about politics never came to light. Okay. And my dad met a wonderful woman in Mayo, Florida, Kerwin Bell, a UF football quarterback. So he's actually in the family, distant, married in. But whenever I talk about Mayo, they're like, oh, Kerwin Bell. It's like, yeah, small town. Smells like dairy farms and chicken farms. So we always just make the joke, it smells like money in agriculture. And knew nothing about agriculture coming from Texas. And you would think you'd know everything about agriculture. Moved to Mayo, Florida. My stepmom got me into FFA, Future Farmers of America. So got very involved in the community, very involved in ag and leadership development, parliamentary procedure, those kind of things. And I don't think I realized at that point where that would get me.
Yeah.
So once graduating, I served as a Florida state vice president for the FFA Association. Traveled all around the state for agriculture, went to South Africa to see what their agricultural life industry is about and how to kind of compare them with America.
Yeah.
U.S. agriculture, Florida agriculture. Got to go to Iowa to tour it was a pork industry tour, and got to go into a facility, a biosecure. You had to go into one door, wait a minute for the air to get out, go to the next door,
wow.
shower in, wear their clothes and such. And over 200,000 swine were in that building for pork production. So breeding, that kind of stuff. And it was just so, you think about all the attacks nowadays with technology or infrastructure, and someone hacks a meat facility, a processing facility, and then we don't have food, or our pork chops rise, or our JBS facility was a long time ago, and that's a processing facility. And that's a groundwork of infrastructure and food security. It's a national security issue. Congresswoman Kat Kamek brought that up in Congress. But touring that and seeing that, if that one farm, and it's a family farm, everyone says that ag it's all corporations and big ag, whatever.
Just families.
But it's family farms. And we got to meet the family. The family gave us the tour, but it's everyone is being so hit by regulations that they go out of business. Well, to be able to have the same amount of production, smaller farms buy over farms and grow. So now PETA or anti-ag folks will say, oh, it's a corporation or this big business, and it's a family farm trying to make a living.
Yeah.
So I got to do all those tours. Went to University of Florida. I went to Santa Fe College. I wanted to be a nurse and then to be a flight nurse. And the student recruiter and development, Charlotte Emerson at University of Florida College of Ag and Life Sciences. She came to Texas Roadhouse. She was obviously state officer and all that before, and she wrote on a business card, "Cool kids choose cows." And I held on to it, and she helped me get into UF. I would have been in the spring. She helped me. I applied for the spring. She deferred me to the fall. So I got to get in on track with my friends and ag friends and all that. And when I graduated, I built a frame and I put in there just the business card, not my name or anything, because it's meant just for her. Yeah. And I put my welcome letter, and I put that business card, and it's still in her office today, of "Cool kids choose cows," and just to show like her one small action. Yep. Put me at UF.
Set the tone for the rest of your life and all the other doors that we're going to open for you. I'm excited because there was a couple of things that you've said in the very beginning that I was like, ooh, I want to go back to that. So I don't want to forget it, but I don't want to lose our train of thought here in this space of having one person believe in you. Yeah. And sometimes it's a few, but it really is interesting how, people just say, like, put on a business card, or they say something to you, or they send you a text, or they just kind of look at you and give you that, like, kind of wink of confidence that you have what it takes. And I think that's really awesome, because now you're in a space where you probably meet tons of kids, tons of, college students that are trying to make, a way for themselves. And when you go to college, nobody knows what they're doing. No. Like, I heard it said once that college isn't about finding what you want to do, it's finding what you don't want to do. Yep. And it's so true, because how many people change their majors, or they go to a class and like, wait, I think I like that, no, I actually hate that, and it's so much shifting in your mind at that time. And so to have somebody come alongside of you and have that vote of confidence in you, I'm sure just shot you through the roof. One of the things that you said, and I want to touch on this because I'm speaking to myself, and I'm also speaking for others that aren't overly aware of what's going on in agriculture or in politics in general, right? So I know every time I go to vote, my parents, ever since I came of age to be able to vote, would just print out basically policies for me. They wouldn't attach it to a person. It was just like, this is what this is what this is. And it was almost like a matching game, right? Yeah. So that I wouldn't just vote based on a party or just based on a name that I had seen. And I always appreciated that. And so I think you're very thorough in what you stand for and why you stand for it. So I want you to take me back to the time, or maybe multiple times, that you visited family farms, right? And you've seen that it's affecting, a unit of 4 to 10 people, not a big corporation. Yeah. And now you're out in the real world learning about regulation. So kind of dumb down for us some of those regulations that maybe both sides, not just like both sides of like Democrat, Republican, but kind of the both sides of what the regulation would do, and why we should be privy to that knowledge in our agriculture.
Yeah, so two things kind of come to mind. One is the dairy industry. So when I worked for the Florida Farm Bureau Federation, nonprofit, and that's what brought me down here. You taught me about Melbourne, and when I was moving to this area for that territory that I would have, I was looking at Vero Beach, and when I was looking at what I would make and where could I rent an apartment, this and that, I would have been in Section 8, like just for how expensive it is in Vero Beach. And I toured an apartment complex in Melbourne. It had a kayak boat launch, and I was like, hey, this is perfect. I can afford it. It's a beautiful area right on the Ogali River. So I did my apartment there, moved once more, and then now bought a house in Palm Bay. And but the Larson Dairy has multiple dairies, long-standing family history in that industry, and people don't realize that dairy farms are regulated by the USDA. They're not regulated by state. And so it's even stricter regulations. And so they have to have the water that comes off the farm out of the dairies, the barns, have to go through like a sand pit filtration. Goes to another one. Like everyone just thinks it's a lagoon and it's all this overload of nutrients and it's disgusting and it's going right back into water. The water that comes off a dairy farm is cleaner than when it went on.
Wow.
And people don't realize that because there's so many regulations. But regulations hurt farmers because it's like if you raise taxes, well, the business isn't going to take the taxes. It's going to come to the consumers. Mm-hmm. Publix, we buy a gallon of milk for what, $5-something more than gas. Mm-hmm. And that's a nutrients or a product for us to use for food. Right. And so it's ridiculous like that. And so being conscious of those regulations and advocating. So in Farm Bureau, I would help my members to advocate for what they need. Poultry production. I mean, there's times where they don't get to pick the price that they sell their eggs. Yeah. They get told what they're going to sell their eggs for. Dairy farmers get told what they're going to sell their milk for. And they're making cents on a gallon. When we're buying $5 a gallon, they're getting like cents on a gallon. So I just think like overregulation is very bad for business, and not just in agriculture, but in all aspects. And we want new businesses. We want to build the economy. But when we have a state government, I don't necessarily think Florida. I think we can do better. But when you have regulation after regulation and red tape, we can't get anything done. Yeah. And some folks won't even start a business because they have to go through all these hoops and bounds. Right. The other one I was thinking about is it was a water bill or a water regulation that rights to our waters. So the other side, I say, I'm Republican. The other side, Democrats and some folks think that that I have the right to sue on behalf of a spring. And this started in Orlando, the rights of our waters. And when I was in Farm Bureau, is a huge aspect. And it's where that if I thought that a greenhouse nursery or a farm was over polluting a river, that I could go sue that farm on behalf of the river. And if you didn't know, there's actually a monkey that has its own house and its own trust fund because of a lawsuit just like this. I don't know where it's at. It's not in Florida, I don't think. But, I mean, an animal has the life of a human because of this type of lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And so now Florida's made it to where, and I think Farm Bureau spearheaded it, but made it to where if I go and sue a farm, and then it turns out this has nothing to do with the pollution of the water, because like Merritt Island used to be all orange groves, mm-hmm. and the river used to be clear. Mm-hmm. Well, now we have a nasty river. Mm-hmm. But what's on Merritt Island? Houses. Yeah. And it's just as we grow in population, we have to make sure that we're balanced with the environment and with our development. Yeah. But agriculture is such a smart part of it, and a minority, that it's easy to point fingers to them.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but just what is, in your opinion, and I know that it's hard to appease everybody. Yeah. But what is the solution to people moving to this county in droves, mm-hmm. and to the state in droves, and balancing our agriculture and housing people that are coming down? What do you feel like is a fair balance to that?
So Brevard County has a comprehensive plan of how we build and how we develop. I sit on the Brevard County Planning and Zoning Board. And sometimes it's 5 hours long, sometimes it's an hour. And it just depends on what's being brought to the board. And that board doesn't say, yes, you can put this housing here, right, or no. It's not randomized. But we go through, because county commission has the final say. So our advisory board is to kind of say, okay, what's the density levels? What are you trying to do? Can the schools handle it? Do we have a school in the area? Like Palm Bay is being developed like crazy.
Yep.
Is there fire stations? Is there infrastructure? Is there water lines, sewer systems, that kind of stuff? But with the density, if you have a whole division that is 4-acre lots, how are you going to put 1,400 houses or 20,000 houses in a subdivision that's right next to it? The density doesn't match. And you have to be conscious of the environmental aspect, because once it goes concrete, it's not coming back.
Yeah.
And over the state of Florida, we have 1,000 new residents a day, and I think that's probably even more now.
Wild.
But that's the size of Tampa every year. So how long can we stamp Tampa across the state of Florida until we don't have the natural beauty that everyone comes here for?
Yeah.
I mean, our beaches get eroded and we have to re-put sand out and stuff. I mean, and that's environmental aspects of hurricanes and storms and such. But we have a lot of environmentally sensitive and protected areas. And how do we make sure that we have that recharge to our aquifer? I was talking to a friend that's running for office, and he was like, well, like, the aquifer's not going to go away. We have water from the aquifer, this and that. And I said, but if you look at the sea level and the aquifer, and if we deplete the aquifer, what's going to happen? The seawater will come in, saltwater intrusion, and then now we don't have that fresh water. And that's the big thing. And Florida's very septic to sinkholes, because we have lime rocks and cave systems under our land, or underground. And so if we allow our fresh water, our aquifer, to sink or lower, we're going to get saltwater intrusion, and then we can't use the water. So when I was running for office for the Florida House of Representatives, some of the questions were about that. And you have to think about the issues, not just what public perception is going to be or what's going to make people happy. Maybe that's why I didn't win my primary, but because I would tell the truth. And you have to think about it. You have to be science. You can't be emotion. Because in South Florida with the algae blooms and the red tide, you can get riled up about, oh my God, all these fish are dying and all this, but what is the actual cause of it?
Yeah, what's the root issue?
It's an overload of nutrients. So like Orlando, the Kissimmee River used to be a curvy river. They decided, hey, let's streamline it. One straight line straight to Lake Okeechobee. Well, if it's curved, all those overloaded nutrients will be deposited around the river and it'll be balanced. But when you streamline it, everything goes straight into Lake Okeechobee, and then you have this whole ecosystem that is overloaded with not pollutants, but like phosphorus and nutrients and that kind of stuff, and that's what causes the algae bloom. Well, then now that gets shifted off to the coast, and then now that's a whole different scientific change and all that kind of stuff in the water, and then you have red tide. And so that gets a lot of emotion going, and then they blame agriculture because they're all in that area, the Everglades agriculture area.
So when they, whoever they are, start to blame the agricultural issues on that, is that then when more regulations come into play?
Yeah.
Like, so it's basically like, this is our root issue, and the only way we're going to fix that is heaping on regulation.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is to basically more diffuse the regulation and going and addressing the actual issue of how we got there. We're going to take a quick break to discuss Write It Down's brand new website. You can head over to widpod.com, widpod.com, and see all the goods. You'll notice a banner at the top of the page that says Learn More. If you click that link, it'll show you how you can support Write It Down. P.S. My favorite part about the website is the Wid Wall, which is a collection of all the Write It Downs from the show. This podcast is made possible by the 1513 Network, so show the network some love and support by listening to their other shows. If not, just stick with Write It Down, because I'm the coolest, the realest, the illest. Now, back to the show. So tell me a little bit about running for office, what that looks like. You're 30.
Ooh, yeah.
And, you just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And that's quite an accomplishment to even be on a ballot, in my opinion. So congratulations to you on that. That is not a small feat.
No.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about when you first started to run and what the campaigning process looks like and how you've had to navigate that.
Yeah. So back in, I think I moved here 2019, I think is when it was, and I got my apartment like we talked about earlier, and it felt like I was here just for work. For Farm Bureau, I would travel to different counties every single day. I would come home, and it was like I moved here for work, And then it's like, so every weekend I would go back to Gainesville to visit friends or go back home to visit family. And it was like I didn't have a community yet. And it drove me up the wall because it's like, do I even want to live here anymore? And so I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to find somewhere that I can build a community. I'm going to find folks that are my age, my same mindset. It was going to be the Gator Club. And then, so I went to one of the meetings with a bunch of old people.
Mm-hmm.
And
classic.
Yeah. And then I found the Space Coast Young Republicans. And it was a very small group at the time. I think it was like 7, 8, 9 of us. And I was like, I'm here. Like, I want to get involved. This is the politics that I like. Never really grew up in politics. I grew up as a conservative. I was registered as a conservative in high school. And just had that mindset, but never thought I would ever get involved in politics or being on the ballot side. And so from that, I got involved locally. I got to meet, it was so cool. One day it was like, I met the mayor of Melbourne or city council members or state representatives. Debbie Mayfield, she was state senator. Now she's on the general ballot for representative. And she has been such a mentor to me. And I asked her one time, I was like, hey, can I meet you for like lunch or whatever? And so we sat down and I was like 30 minutes, hour tops. We sat there for 2 hours just casually talking about who I need to meet, what I need to do, her advice, her story of running for office, all of that. Yeah. She's gone door knocking with me, that kind of stuff. And so it's just like when a lot of times people put politicians on a pedestal and like they're a celebrity. And it's like, I hate that. Mm-hmm. And that's not who I wanted to be. And because it's for the people, it's for the community. It's using what I've learned in the past 10 years after college and
advocating,
apply it, and bring the next generation. You look at you look at Congress and you got senators and representatives that are rolling around in wheelchairs, and people joke that it's the best retirement home is Washington D.C. and the Capitol.
Yeah.
And so I want to make a difference. And so I ran for Melbourne City Council in 2020. COVID, really interesting door knocking. People don't want to talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's scared of each other. You don't want to be out in public. It was weird. But that was my first race, and I got to meet a lot of people. And showing that hard work and just trailblazing through it made a name for myself, and got to really know a lot of folks in the industry, so to speak, in the business community, politically. I lost that race. It was my first one. Not surprised. I think I raised like $5,000.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of support and a lot of high individuals.
Yep.
I caught their eye.
Yeah.
And built those relationships, and those are relationships I still have today, and they're in high places. And it's not that they have power or anything, but that influence and their will to help.
Yep.
And I gravitate towards those that want to do good for the community. So I was talking to Senator Mayfield at the time, Senator Mayfield. Well, she still is right now. And I was like, I'm thinking about State House. Like, the seat's going to be open. I don't want to run for city council in Palm Bay. Maybe I shouldn't say it. The running joke. Yeah. Palm Bay is a mess, and there's a lack of trust and corruption, and that's something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
I'm very involved in Palm Bay.
Yeah.
And not the hair product, but the city.
Yeah.
And I serve as the chairman of the Sustainability Advisory Board. I'm on infrastructure and oversight and Parks and Recreation, and we can talk about that later with the environmental aspect of it all. But I decided to run for the Florida House of Representatives. And that, to me, that's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And to see behind the curtain and what goes into it, I use all my PTO for the year doing meetings with different interest groups, police federations, nursing associations, all these interests they have to get bills passed. I got the endorsement of the Nurses Association of Florida, and one of their biggest things was having a filtration system in the operating room, because when they cauterize blood cells and that kind of stuff to stop bleeding, that smoke I think it's like comparable to smoking 30 cigarettes for that one operation.
Wow.
That affects their lungs. And I was like, absolutely. Like, why would you not have that? Why don't we have that?
Right.
And my sister's a nurse. My sister got into nursing because my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she took care of her, and that kind of got her into going into nursing and taking care of folks that way. And just getting to meet all those individuals, but tons of door knocking. I think I knocked over 10,000 doors.
Wow.
And it's like cold calling. Cold calling
sucks.
I
need to hire you for real estate. Like, what? That's wild.
And it's just, you go up to a door and you talk to them, and I'm glad I have a personality that I can pretty much talk to a wall even, but talk to anybody and somehow relate with them of something that I've done in my life or have done in my life and relate with them. I've sat on couches. I've been invited into homes and sat on couches and had heart-to-hearts and that kind of stuff, and those are some of my favorite moments. But so many events, trying to raise money, get name ID out there, policy, debates. It was crazy, and it was a lot of time. And it's disappointing when you put in so much effort and it doesn't turn out. But going into it, I was talking to one of my best friends, it's a win-win. If you lose, that's not what you wanted, but you've been able to meet so many people in the community. You built up a name, and you can continue to trailblaze and go forward. 30 years old. And I was on the ballot to run for the Florida House of Representatives.
That's amazing. What an accomplishment. And you can tell that you're not just in it for the politics aspect, that you're in it because you're passionate about what you're trying to change. And that oftentimes, not all the time because we live in a messy world, oftentimes transcends all the other stuff. And so it's one of those things where you would rather, it's the same thing if you're a business owner or if you're an author or if you're a musician, you want to build organically. Because that is what's going to be sustainable through all the other, smoke shows and all those other things that are always like grabbing our attention, right? And what you were doing is building relationship with people. You're informing people what you're actually trying to do, because half the time we don't know. I mean, there are a handful of people I know that actually pay attention to policies and change, but a lot of people don't. And
average voter does not pay attention. It's name ID.
It is name ID. It's, I saw your name in my mailbox, or, we've talked about this before, and I've seen you on the side of the road with the sign, so, maybe, and then you name associate when you are going to vote. And so you can tell that you're very passionate about what you're trying to change. Why don't we segue a little more into the environment space you mentioned with parks and recreation? So tell us a little bit about that.
So ever since, so I worked with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation, and that mostly about ag, but natural resources. I left Florida Farm Bureau Federation, to go work for a national nonprofit, kind of a startup nonprofit in a sense, but it was folks my age, the next generation, that was pushing for conservative conservation. And I was like, I love that. I love conservation. I love going to the Everglades. I mean, my first trip in the Everglades, it was the Hells Bay. And it's a 12-mile round trip. 12-mile round trip to go out to a chickie. So it's a wooden platform, kind of a carport, wooden platform in the middle of the Everglades mangroves, no cell service. You kayak out there, you bring in what you need, you take all your trash out, but it's you and God. And pythons and crocodiles and alligators and everything in between.
Else he created.
Mosquitoes. But it's so peaceful. And you're just out there. It's like maybe you see someone. And if you see someone out there, I was out there one time, and the folks that were, because there's two sides of that chickie, and you get a permit for one of them. And there were folks out there that were Democrat. We just started talking. And it wasn't a negative argument or debate, but it was just like, what are your views? How do you see this? And I would say mine. And it's nice to sit down and have that humanity and just talk about what are the issues of today. And that's just like, it's like we talk about sitting around the campfire, like campsite fire chat, this and that. It's like Everglades chickie, try not to get you behind python chat. And it's so beautiful. And because we have that common interest of the environment.
And sorry to cut you off, but it makes me think of FDR with the fireside chats, during World War II time, where it was like that's what brought people together. And if we go back to that space in history, right, it's like, you see this in our country, you see this with the monarchy in England, where like the media and, politics are just like, it's like oil and water, yet they both feed each other. It's a very bizarre thing that, day and age that we live in. But I love what you're saying of just like, we're just around the campfire. We might have different views, on, religion or on politics or whatever the more buzzwords are of, do you believe that? But at the end of the day, when you're sitting across the table from someone or around a fire with somebody, the things that you say to people in person in those conversations is much different than what you might say online. Or what you might say in a comment or behind their back or whatever it is. So I love that. And again, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I just wanted to draw our attention to that, where it's like, not everybody has to agree on everything. Like we are human. We won't. We're humans. we're people that, have different upbringings, have, different tastes in life for things, and things that pull at our heartstrings, things that don't. And so I really appreciate that about you, of you will take the time to sit with others that might not agree with you, and you might learn something from them and they might learn something from you. So, okay, going back to that space of, what did you call it?
Chicky.
Chicky.
Chikee.
Okay, Chicky.
I've been to a few, and oh my gosh, I actually got stranded. Me and a buddy went out. I always try to take people to the Everglades. Like, have you been to the Everglades? No. Well, let's go. And we'll go kayaking, and it's always like a 6 mile there, 6 mile back, and when you go through the mangroves, you have to follow white PVC pipes, and sometimes you can't find them.
Yeah.
And you're just doing circles out in the middle of nowhere until you find the pipe.
Yeah.
And but it was called Hell's Bay because back in the day it was hell to get in and hell to get out.
Okay.
And so the first one I did, it was me and my sister on that one, and I've gone out there alone and met people out there that are also staying there, like I mentioned. I've gone out into Florida Bay, so the south side of the Everglades, out in the Florida Bay, and had an easy trip out there. Weather was supposed to be beautiful, and then it just dropped. The wind picked up, the temperature dropped, had no winter clothes type deal, miserable. Yeah. And it got to the point where it's like, if we wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and there's no wind, pack everything up and we're getting out of here.
Yeah.
and the wind never slowed down, so we tried to hug the coast. Well, low tide came in. So we were kayaking in an inch of water on top of mud. So we had to get out, and we had saw a crocodile go into the river or go into the bay right where we were having to go. And I'm like, let's go a little further. I don't know where that crocodile went. And so we kept going, and then it got just so hard to paddle because you're literally sticking your paddle in mud and pushing. And so finally it's like we get out. We had some rope. I tied the rope around my waist. I had the 2 kayaks I was pulling. My buddy had a machete, kind of keep guard and keep going. And, I mean, we started early morning, and it got to the point where the conversation was, we're out of water, we're out of food, and it's starting to be sunset. What do we do? So my buddy had AT&T and had 1 bar. So we called the emergency services of or National Park, law enforcement and whatnot, and gave them, like, we could see the coordinates and that kind of stuff and kind of landmarks. And they came, and I was like, oh, they'll bring an airboat. Perfect. Yeah. And I was like, can y'all not bring an airboat? And they're like, this is the ocean. I was like, there's an inch of water. Like, why can't you come get me?
Yeah.
And so we had to trek another mile through mud, dragging our kayaks to get to a canal to where the boat could pick us up. So actually,
sending a helicopter.
Yeah. I told my buddy, I was like, I always thought I'd be rescued by a helicopter someday with my adventures, but I thought it'd be in the mountains.
Yeah, and here you are.
Not in the Everglades.
Yeah.
And we finally made it, and we got back by boat, by being rescued by the National Park law enforcement, get the kayaks on their boat, all that, take us there. And they're just like, wow, what a trip. And then we drove all the way back to Melbourne that night.
Wow.
Because it was like we had work on Monday morning. And then another time went out, weather was supposed to be fine, and that just shows you Florida's weather. And we kayaked straight out to Johnson Point, I think is what it was called, and stayed in the Chicky. There's 5 of us, and we had hammocks, and then we had like a tent for like 3 people, and there's 5 of us. So a storm came in. The cop, one of the law enforcement officers for National Park, came out and said, hey, just want to let you know, there's a storm coming out. It's going to be 75 mile an hour winds, this hail, this and that. Do not try to come back. Stay here, bunker down. We know you're here. We know how many of y'all are here. Tie up your kayaks, all that kind of stuff. Just prep and be ready. And holy cow. Like, you could feel the Chicky shaking. We lost the kayak, so we actually had to be rescued again because we didn't have boats to get back. And it was an adventure. But it's those moments in the environment that you realize the power of Mother Nature and how important it is to save it.
Yeah.
And there's so much of, like, how do we protect the Everglades? I mean, Governor DeSantis has been able to allocate billions of dollars to restore the flow of the Everglades, and that's cleaning our water, and to make sure that the Everglades stays there because it's such an environmentally sensitive area. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you got the Florida pythons that are just ransacking environmental I mean, they're eating the environment down there. And so I've actually gone out with the South Florida Water Management District at midnight. It was actually my birthday. I didn't tell them about that. And then finally I was like, yeah, this was a cool birthday. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, it was my birthday. And I went python hunting and going through the water and trying to catch. We saw a 13-foot python.
No, thank you.
And we almost got it. But it was so much fun. And just to see the nightlife and the Everglades and all that. But it's just so important to protect it.
Yeah.
And that kind of go like with the Everglades and the amount of things that we do in America to lower pollution, to make sure we have a healthy environment, to make sure we have that balance. I mean, Miami has a non-development zone, like a straight wall of where they cannot develop. Mm-hmm. So it will protect the Everglades. And being able to focus on the innovation in Florida, the innovation of technology or energy efficiency and those kind of things in Florida and America, and have home energy independence is very important. And that's where it's like other countries like China. I mean, the U.S., I think, gives or produces 13% of pollution in the world. China is 2/3 of that. If I remember what I read right, it's like 1/3 or 2/3 of pollution is created by China. And I mean, there's Florida senators, Senator AMR, chair of the Environmental and Natural Resources in the Senate, she's heading that on. I have her op-ed right here, actually, type stuff. And there's a memorial that was put out about it and how we need to hold other countries accountable. China's trying to buy land in Florida. They're trying to buy land all over the country of ag lands and natural resource lands. They're trying to buy land here locally around our bases. That's scary. Yeah. And it's like, how do we? And I think a Chinese company is buying the land around the Melbourne airport. L3 Harris, Northrop Grumman, they do all the testing there. All the top security. I mean, a lot of our friends work there, and they're like,
we don't know what they do because they can't tell us. Yeah.
But I know they get their phones locked up, so they can't
talk to anyone. And they're in a basement all day.
Yep.
And, exactly.
In a lockbox, and the fact that China's trying to buy land right next to it, it's national security. But not only in the defense area, but also in agriculture. If they have our land where we can't produce food at home, if we're relying on products from them, there's not to get political, which we already have, but not to get political, too politically. I mean, Trump's campaign is talking about tariffs on other countries and abolishing national or federal income tax and those kind of things. So we're put tariffs on these international companies. Well, in my mind, that's going to just blow up in a good way American-made products, and maybe it's going to be more expensive. But why not support American-made products and support the businesses here locally?
Right.
And everyone's like, well, if we have to put tariffs on other countries of their imports, well, now it's gonna the cost will be passed to the consumer. Well, yeah, we'll go buy an American-made product that's going to support our own country, our own families and businesses here locally.
Yep.
And that's kind of the same as holding them accountable for their pollution. We focus so hard in America to lower our pollution rates, make sure we have clean energy, and other countries don't do the same. Mm-hmm. And we have to do that. Not only is that being focused in the Florida legislature, so Senator AMR out of Miami-Dade, the Florida Keys, she co-sponsored it in the Senate. Toby Oberdorf, Representative Oberdorf in the House, he co-sponsored it there. It passed. And we have a resolution about how we need to hold China accountable. Mm-hmm. We have to get the next generation involved. That's why I was running for office. That's why I'm very involved with the young Republicans. I told you next weekend I'm going to Montana to door knock for a Senate candidate for the U.S. Senate in Montana. And trying to win those seats to where we can have not necessarily. I mean, I would love to have a majority of Republicans. But really, I mean, we have a House and a Senate on the Congress level that is split in half. Mm-hmm. How do you get anything done? Yeah. We can't get anything done. And we're so divisive in left and right and this and that. And it's like, we can't get anything done as a country, and we are the free world. How are we showing? I went to Albania with young Republicans to show them what conservative aspects we do in America. There's so many eyes around the world looking at America as to what we do and how they can be better, how they can have a better democracy, and it's scary.
And it's the truth. I went to Spain last year, and I was having a conversation with these two gentlemen sitting next to me and my friend. Like, the restaurant, our tables were like a little far apart, but we couldn't help but overhear that they had British accents. They were from Spain. And so then we started talking about, different countries and blah, blah, blah. And they said to us that even the UK looks to America on what we're doing. So if something's happening around the world, they look over at what we're doing first. Yeah. And it's like we set the tone. And it's interesting because, you know, some people in America were like, why would anyone do that? Like, we're so jacked up, blah, blah, blah. You know, you kind of have that air in conversation with people, but it's like, well, why wouldn't they? Look at the country that we live in. I mean, there are a lot of broken systems for sure, but there's a lot of things that are right with our country. And I've had the opportunity since I was 12 to be able to travel to different countries and around the world and see, you know, in a small microscopic way, how other people and other countries are ran and how people feel about their government or how people feel about what they're headed for. Yeah. And we are very fortunate to be in this country.
Oh my God, yes.
It's wild and in more ways than one. And a lot of people in different countries spend their entire childhood praying and wishing and hoping and dreaming to be able to be in this country and be a U.S. citizen. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where I really value that you take that serious and you take being a Florida resident very serious as well. Yeah. And you're taking, you know, being a part of Palm Bay. So, like, you take every part of where you're from and what you do into account when you're trying to educate others on different policies and what's kind of going on in the world. Because to be completely honest, I don't pay attention too much to ag or to the environment. I am a bougie shopper with Sephora lip gloss all the time, right? So my mind is trained differently. Yeah. But everything that we do as a country should be in unity with one another. Even if we have opposing views, our main goal should be unified to keep each other together and have each other's back. And I really appreciate that. Before we get towards the end of our show, I wanted to just kind of tee you up to talk about maybe something else we didn't touch on that you feel like is a big part of who you are and why you push for what you push for with campaigning.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to be negative. Like, and you were mentioning that it's so easy to be negative. And in America, it's like, oh, we have this going on, we have that going on. This is horrible. That's horrible. Because I think we're so privileged to so many great things in America, and it's so easy to get down on it. And when, like you said, going internationally, I wish everybody would go internationally, and not just on a vacation, but to experience their life and understand and talk to their locals and see what they're living through, their culture. Yeah. And it's hard to be positive about things. And I think we all get in that trap where it's so much easier, like, oh, my Starbucks coffee was... I drink iced coffee. I'll go to a cold state, and they're like, why are you drinking an iced coffee? I was like, because I'm from Florida, and I don't like being hot, so I'm going to drink a cold coffee. Yeah. And 5 shots Americano.
I need to write this down.
5 shots Americano. Very strong. And but it's and that kind of deal. It's like I like to do that, but maybe like one time they gave me a hot coffee, and it's like, oh, I don't want a hot coffee. I want a cold coffee. But it's not a big deal. Yeah. And Starbucks, they will fix it quickly. Yeah, yeah. And they're great with that. But there's so many things in the day. It's like, oh my gosh, I keep hitting every single red light to get here type thing. And it's like, maybe, I mean, you think about 9/11. There are people that survived 9/11. They were supposed to be in that building when this plane struck. But because they missed their subway, because their alarm didn't go off, they survived another day. Yep. And it's just God has that way of like, hey, it's going to work out. Yep. Whatever it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it's about resiliency and keep going on. I mean, you'll have so many negative things thrown at you by people that want to hurt you and bring you down and talk about politics. Like it's if you don't have merit, let me attack you so you look worse in public eye. Yep. And as long as you can be resilient and be strong, I mean, the way I grew up, I had to be resilient. I had to take care of myself. But God put people in my life. I would think and pray internally, and then it would happen. Yeah. Like the foster family I lived with, they reached out and said, hey, we want you to live with us. We'll drive you in 30 minutes to school, and we'll drive again to pick you up every day. Wow. 2-hour trip, like 1 hour round trip twice a day, just so I could go to my same school and have that steady foundation. Wow. Then I went to their school. But it's people like that come into your lives that just blindside you and show you how important you are as a person. And that's what I want to do in politics. That's why I get involved. I mean, there's I pick up shifts at Melbourne Roadhouse now. I was like, why not go back? I love the culture. It's so much fun. I'll be serving there tonight. Come see me. No. Oh yeah. But It's just fun.
Texas Roadhouse.
There's
Great company, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Great company.
Love it. I took one of their catchphrases, "People matter."
Yeah.
And I'll use it all the way. People matter.
They do.
When it comes down to it, and someone's this, that, people matter. How can we take care of people?
This is one thing I will shout out Texas Roadhouse, all Texas Roadhouses, is that it's telling, because I've worked in restaurants before, it's telling that I still want to go back after knowing everything that, because when you work at a restaurant, you see how people prepare their meat, how people prepare their sides, if they wash their salad, if they, if something hits the floor, are they putting it, you see those things. And we both worked in Texas Roadhouse for years. I worked there. That was my first job at 16 years old. And and it's so telling that, like, when my friends are like, where do you want to go to dinner? I'm like, Texas Roadhouse. Like, I didn't get tired of, and
no one ever says no.
Right. I know. No one ever says no. And it's funny. I make a funny joke about Texas Roadhouse, but that's the same thing with you. I've known you for, like we said, about a decade now. I've seen you behind the scenes. You did lock me in a meat freezer once when I was going to get, because we had the meat freezer next to the beer cooler, and there was one entrance to it, and it locks from the outside, and you just see me in a little square that's frosted.
Snapchat will pop up in my memories all the time.
Yeah, where
I
I'm like,
die laughing.
I'm freezing in here. But it's been an honor and a privilege to be your friend and to watch you grow in this space, and I'm excited for what's ahead. I have a couple rapid fire questions. Some fun stuff.
Well, and I want to say we're kind of in the same, like, career wise too. I mean, you're real estate. I sell insurance with State Farm, and it's like, never thought that I would be out of the nonprofit working for an insurance company.
I know.
And it's hard right now. It's, just the market, and interest rate just dropped 0.5% and that kind of stuff, so that'll help. But it's interesting that it's like now we're like Roadhouse, and now we're
in the same kind of industry in the same county. It's really cool, and it is an honor because I can vouch for your character and your work ethic. So I'm thankful to have you on. Thank you. Having you on Write It Down. Okay, one of my questions for you, kind of more in the ag world, I guess. If you could be any land animal, what would it be?
An ag animal?
Let's do
like
ag.
Food production. Oh gosh.
Food production.
Like what?
Put yourself in their shoes. Okay?
Who would I want to be? I think. Gosh, I eat them all, so it's like I don't really want to be eaten.
All right.
Let's see. Let's be a. Who gets taken care of the best?
Right.
I think.
Like a dairy cow?
No, I would say but I almost want to say a chicken.
Yeah, chickens seem like they have a good
chicken.
life.
I would say pig, just because they kind of live their life and that just kind of wallow in mud and just eat. Yeah. And the chicken, same. Maybe a chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They seem like a chill life.
There's a lot of people out there homestead life that get chickens and keep them around. Another question I have for you. I feel like I've asked this. I know I've asked this a few times, but it is telling. Do you floss your teeth before or after you brush your teeth?
My dentist absolutely hates me. I think I have good teeth, and I keep up with it. Yeah. I do not floss.
What?
I do not floss. I'll go to the dentist, and they'll be like, you need to floss. I was like, okay, I'll floss. And I have friends that are in dental school, and they're like, you have to floss. Okay. And I have the floss picks and everything.
Yeah, the easy ones.
Yp. Don't use them.
Still don't do it.
Now, if there's something caught in there, dang sure I'm flossing it, but not on my. So I hope my dentist doesn't listen to this.
Right now. It's so embarrassing. I'm just kidding. Okay, last one.
He's gross. Gosh.
You could go and vacation in any country. Where would it be? Not the United States. We know you love our country.
I think I've always wanted to go to Australia. I think Greece would be beautiful, all the white buildings. I've been able to go to Albania. That was awesome. I think Italy would be cool. Mm-hmm. But I think if but South Africa was awesome, and I think that I probably would say Australia. I was gonna say
you would like Australia.
Yeah.
My roommate and I went last year, and we didn't get to see all that there was. We did Southern Australia and Northern New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it is unreal, the beauty. And they do. You would actually appreciate how much they preserve their environment.
Yeah.
They're over there wiping your shoelaces and checking under your chin to see if you have any dust from America coming in. You know, they take it very serious, their ecosystem. So I think you would love it. Well, We are at that point of the show where I ask each guest to give the audience something to write down. So,
Yes.
Logan Luse, what is your write it down?
My write it down. So it was a random phrase one time talking to friends, and I never thought it would like stick. And it's really stuck through my life. And a lot of my friends will be like, "What's my phrase?" And they would say it. I always say, "I do what I can when I can." And so in the way it's like, do what you can when you can.
Yeah.
But if I can always do what I can when I can, I'll always put my best foot forward.
Yep.
And there's times when you can do so much for somebody and you do everything you can to help them, because in return they're going to help you. You're building that relationship, and scratch my back, I scratch yours type deal. But sometimes you can't do much. But if it's in politics, it's like, hey, can you help me with this? Like, I have this idea of policy and how to get out of this regulation or this or that or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I have the resources for it. I know folks, this and that. Let's do it. And then there's other times where it's like, hey, I'm trying to get a meeting with this office, with this senator or whatever. And it's like, yeah, let me make a call and see if I can make that work.
Yep.
So it's something could be so simple, and maybe I don't have all the resources to make it happen or the time. And then other times it's like, hey, I'll head on this with you and let's get it done.
Yep.
And I think that's in anything. It's like insurance. It's I had a call. My office that I work in, we're open Saturdays from 9 to 1. We're the only State Farm office that's open, and most insurance companies aren't open on the weekends. And we'll get calls of people that have policies everywhere with other companies, but like they can't get they can't get the car bound to get it off the lot. Yeah. And I wasn't able to write them with State Farm, and I said, hey, hold on, I know a few independent agencies. Let me reach out to them and see if I can get you help. And they just stayed on the phone for a minute. I said, here's one that I found online that I know of people in the community. It's supposed to be really great. I know someone else, and I was shooting out text messages, and,
You're like,
and I
they
gave
might
them
be
a
on
number.
a boat, but they're going to answer.
No, one was on a boat. One was on a boat. Yes.
That's hilarious.
He was like, I'm on a boat right now, but I have one of my other agents that
Yep.
can get, like, she'll be home soon and can write a quote. And, like, it's just,
I love that.
Like, I just felt, I was like,
connected.
How do I, and like having those resources and that networking to where it's like, how can I help you? Like, let me figure this out. And it's like totally adamant, like, hey, sorry, can't write you State Farm. Best of luck.
Yeah.
But it's if you go out of your way and take care of people, they're going to remember you. They're going to come back and say, I may get 5 cars from that later. Yeah. Like, I may write their house later on type thing. And it's if you always go the extra mile, always do what you can when you can. Yep. And it works out. What you sow. Yeah.
And I've always, said this, that, God is always taking care of me so you can take care of others. And when you are resting in a space of plenty instead of lack, right, you end up wanting to help others get to that space as well. And Logan, I think you do that remarkably. And thank you so much for joining the Write It Down podcast. Of course.
I was so excited. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Write It Down podcast. This podcast is a part of the 1513 network. You can catch a variety of shows on their website, 1513.com. If you enjoy listening to Write It Down, please subscribe, share with your friends, and if there's any ink left in your pen, write a review. For more content, follow the fun on Instagram by following at WIDPOD. That spells WIDPod. It's super cool. Stands for Write It Down Podcast, but it's abbreviated to WIDPod. Anyways, thanks for listening, and we will catch you later.